2015 South Carolina AgriBiz and Farm Expo. I'm Donna London, and I am here talking with Ms. Deb Tropp. She is with the U.S. Department of Agriculture and in the area of agricultural marketing service. Deb, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity.
You just came out of a session where you were giving a lot of farmers that are looking at small farms, or I mean what we in the past have called the niche farms, and talking about marketing trends and how local food movement is across the landscape of the U.S.
Right.
Tell me about what you're seeing across the country.
Sure. Well, one of the things we're seeing is that local food is not a fad. Local food has staying power. And one of the reasons is that both the commercial buyers as well as the customers, the consumers, both are hankering for a certain type of business relationship that helps promote local food. They really want a more personal transaction. They want greater transparency, they want greater guarantees of quality, they want greater responsiveness, they want greater authenticity, and they want to know the story of the farmer. So what we're seeing from the commercial buyer side is that the supply chain is evolving, and it's moving from what used to be kind of a strictly competitive, price-based business to greater cooperation. And what's happened through cooperation is that the buyers and the processors, the producers working together are better able to exchange vital marketing information, respond more quickly to their customers, have more coordinated planning attentions, guarantee greater availability and greater volume, test out ideas, and overall be more successful in meeting their goals.
Right.
So there are financial incentives. In the meantime, you have a number of consumers who are really looking for a number of things. They're looking for freshness, they're looking for something new, they're looking to help their communities, they're looking to be connected to the people who grew their food. They want to know answers to how their food was grown, and they really want that customer service element that so many of us are missing. So in many ways, one of my takeaway messages was, local is not just about geography. Local is a proxy for personal relationship.
Right.
And how do you invest and reinvest in your community? And that's why it has staying power, and that's why the small and mid-sized farmer can use it to their advantage in making the case. And one thing that's really striking in some of the recent national statistics that come out of the National Grocery Association and the like is that this interest is true across income groups. It's no longer just the affluent consumers that want it, or the single yuppies. It's low-income people willing to pay more for local. It's middle-income people. It's senior citizens. So it's fascinating stuff.
And sometimes it seems like it's also getting back to their roots,
Absolutely
their memories. Like
that's right.
What a tomato used to taste like.
That's right. That's exactly right.
And and it might be as simple as that. But then on the other hand, it's things like tomato tastings, where you can see what these different varieties taste like, and they're all fresh.
That's
they're
right.
just all very different.
Yes, and one of the things about local, of course, is if you're not as worried about how hardy a particular product is, and you're growing something because it has a better flavor, because it's more appealing, and you don't worry about how does it hold up through long-distance transportation, then you're able to offer greater and different variety of products. Some of the heirloom products that may not be as cosmetically beautiful, or they may not be as uniform.
Right.
But they obviously offer us, great, wonderful taste experiences and wonderful experiences in our cooking. And think about, not just at your farmer's market, but even at your store, how many more heirloom apples we see, heirloom tomatoes we see. Why is that? Something that started in direct marketing and then really got swept up by the mainstream.
And I have to ask you, it's a silly question, but have you seen the Portlandia television show?
It's funny you asked. I'm not a regular,
Yes,
but
but
of
that
course,
one
when the piece came out about the provenance of the chicken,
Right,
I can't
right.
tell you how many people sent me that clip, and I loved it.
Well,
that's
it
a little
is-
excessive.
That's it, yeah,
Of course, it is Portland.
That's the
but it
that's
does
the
give
yuppie one.
it is
but-
the yuppie
but-
one, but it does give you a sense of people's concern. And I think more seriously, you think about the animal welfare perspective there. There are many groups that have come together, and one of the examples that I shared was about a group, Oregon Natural Beef, where they're required as part of their membership of this network to do in-house supermarket sampling in the stores where they sell product,
Right.
to reinforce that sense of personal connection with the customer,
Yes.
to answer questions, to be there as a resource. And and so it really does appeal, talking about Oregon again, but
Yeah.
it really does appeal to that thirst for knowledge, thirst for authenticity, thirst for connection, and someone to stand behind their product. And I think all of us who have become maybe regrettably accustomed to shopping at big box stores for everything are really hankering for a bit of that
For that.
customer service experience and looking for that quality. Because as you know, whether it's the tomato or it's the sweet corn, having something fresh in peak season can be revelatory if you're not used to it.
Right.
It changes your experience of food. And if you're trying to pick healthier product, if you're trying to cook healthier, what better way to do it than to buy the best possible ingredients at an affordable price and incorporate them into your meals?
And in my case, and in many of my friends' cases, we would travel to other places to experience that. Now we are starting to see a bit more of that here in South Carolina. Not as mainstream as you might see in other places.
Sure.
Are not as prevalent. I'm not sure if it's completely mainstream, but it's getting closer.
Absolutely. Well, you
And-
have a center of culinary culture here in Charleston, and you have, I'm certainly that's spread out, and people, you have also a lot of tourists, and people bring their expectations from other places, and it also
Yes.
gets spread, but I think there's also a pride in place. And I think in many parts of the country, one of the reasons that local is so popular is it allows people to go back and say, what did we traditionally produce here? Can we do it again? We have the right terrain, we have the right conditions. As you also heard today, there's this real interest among young people in farming and in doing careers that relate to the farm sector. So they can get very excited. It's not too far away, but if you've been to Asheville,
Oh,
it's a
yes,
perfect
yeah.
example of what's happening, where they could local food and the whole DIY startup culture and food entrepreneurship is really transformed what that community looks like.
And it's amazing to see what's happened there and how actually here in South Carolina in Greenville, how it's there as well, very different.
Sure.
But also it's spreading, and that is an exciting thing
Absolutely.
to see.
Well, when I think about it, food is one of those things you can't outsource.
Right.
Right? So it has some durability and staying power just because it's one of those industries that it also provides that creative outlet, that area for innovation. It's also something that we need to do 3 times a day. So, there's a lot of potential, and I think it's wonderful to be in a position where I can help, maximize consumer choice. That's the way that I look at my job. It's helping producers, but it's also doing it based on a desire for diversity and choices in what we can consume and what we can obtain at an affordable price point.
And I know you have a couple of publications here about the value chain.
Exactly.
The value chain seems to have expanded
Right.
quite a bit.
Yes.
When you consider that, I'm not sure, but that maybe at one point there was a disconnect
Yeah, exactly.
between the chef and the producer.
Right.
The restaurant.
Manufacturer,
buyers
what have you, exactly.
And, right, and you didn't know who was getting your fish or who was growing
right.
your cows, and that has expanded
That's
so
right.
much. Also, along those lines, what we're seeing in terms of insurance and banking and things like and
the availability
loans.
of different instruments, not
Right.
just from USDA, the gentleman was speaking from, a woman was speaking from FSA about the microloan program. But in addition, we've seen places like Farm Credit Council, we've seen places like CoBank have come up with new instruments, whether it's looking at specialty crop producers or organic producers, or realizing that this is a territory that hasn't been explored as much in the past. We've tended to focus on the commodity producer, partly because of the structure of the Farm Bill, but now we're recognizing the financial potential of specialty crop production. And I'm really glad that it's getting the attention it is, and I'm really glad that farmers that are trying to produce this high quality, nutritious food can get the supportive structure and infrastructure they need. And in the infrastructure way, that's one of the things we've been working on, is looking at models for how can people work together in a cooperative way and sharing some of those models. The value chain concept in food is a fairly new one. We don't have a lot of data. Michigan State University has done 2 national surveys, so we're starting to get a sense of what the atmosphere looks like, but it's still new and evolving. And so what we think we can do to support people's participation is twofold. One, provide lessons learned by looking at existing models and what they have experienced. And number 2, by having these grant programs available through the goodwill of Congress. We have a farmers market promotion program that supports activities in direct-to-consumer marketing, and a local food promotion program that just was funded for the first time last year as a result of the new Farm Bill, which is supporting those networks that are working with intermediaries, whether they be an aggregator or a food hub, to get product into institutional food service, into hospitals, into schools, into restaurants and the like.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, how does USDA get out to the communities to find out what the needs are? I know that you have the surveys that provide information, but are there offices that have people out in the communities where they can bring back information?
Well, it's a mixed answer. I will say that for the work that I do specifically at AMS, we do not have field offices, so that's why I'm here in places like here and trying to do as much outreach as possible so that I can actually learn information from people in the field and bring it back home and get ideas percolating. The reason I am here specifically is that I was invited by a colleague from Clemson with whom I've done a couple of cooperative research agreements. We do have authority to do the cooperative research agreements for certain targeted areas that we think are important, and so that is one way we do it, is we work with our land grant colleagues and say, what's bubbling up, we're seeing this happen, how can we work together? Right. Small amounts of money we're talking usually, but I think big impact for small investment, in addition to our general grant programs, which of course are another laboratory. My colleagues at USDA also run a farmers market on the headquarters campus. That's an ongoing laboratory. We converted it from a seasonal market to a year-round market, and now we're even exploring possibly doing evening hours and expanding the market. So we do occasional surveys of patrons at our market. We learn a lot about what you need to do at a market from that model. So there are lots of different ways. I wouldn't say it's perfect. It's too easy to operate in a vacuum, so we have to be very conscientious about making sure we get out in the field, and we're very thankful this year that our budget is resolved and allows us to go out and do our job.
Well, and I'm sure all of us here are very appreciative of what you're doing and bringing that information to us. The one other thing that I wanted to ask you about is that in the past, we would look to places like California and Portland, New York, for us in South Carolina, we might look up to Asheville or places like that. But if you could identify, I know you've got some case studies here, but can you identify some states that have programs going on that are worth
investigating? Well, I think that there's nascent grassroots support just about anywhere in the country, to be honest with you. One state I will mention, just because I think they've taken some things to the next level, is Vermont. Because there's such great coordination among all the players, whether it's the land-grant universities working with state government, working with nonprofit organizations and coming up with plans, working with private industry, lots of community-based conversations, which I think are essential in moving local food activities along and scaling up. They probably have the greatest number of food hubs, so these aggregation facilities for local food in the nation of all the states. And they have recently initiated at UVM a certificate in food hub management. Hub management. So they are actually working now to integrate the workforce development side with what's going on in terms of business activity. And I think that that's an interesting model to look at where that will go.
That's
and
exciting.
What does that mean exactly? And we'll talk about technical colleges and opportunities of careers. I think we need to figure out, and we don't know the answers really, but we need to figure out, what does this new paradigm of ag marketing mean for the kind of jobs that are being created in our new farm economy?
Right. It is opening up a whole new world in my mind, and it's just a very exciting
Absolutely.
time
That's right.
to be aware of that.
That's right.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us
Certainly.
today.
It's been a pleasure.
I've been speaking with Deb Tropp. She is with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. She is in agricultural marketing.